Will, have you heard about the dbrand story?
Oh, the forgiveness rather than permission model.
Oh
Yes, I'm
my
familiar.
goodness. I don't know if it's tea, but I'll give you the scoop here. I haven't talked to anyone about it.
This has
But
happened. This isn't the first time this has happened to them, for what it's worth,
um,
right? Because they did this with the PlayStation Blades too, didn't they?
something like that. I mean, I'm not even super familiar. I know they do a lot of sponsorships, and I know they make a lot of skins and stuff. But this is a whole new level of brashness. But so for folks who don't know, right, we're talking Steam Machine and dbrand, maker of skins and
Like
cases
screen
and stuff.
protectors,
Yeah,
and cases, and stuff like that. Yeah.
things to modify your everything from Steam Decks to Switch 2s and things like that, and phones. They When Steam Machine was announced in November, I guess they teased, oh, here's a thing we're working on, which is a companion cube, weighted companion cube enclosure, a case for the Steam Machine. And
It's a cube. It's just it's a
Yeah.
natural. It's a collaboration that was born to happen.
a collaboration would be one way to put it, right?
Seems like an easy thing to just call them and be like, "Hey, can we do this?" And then they'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure, absolutely," or "No, leave us alone."
So I had Steam Machine for review about I think I got it 9 days before the embargo, and dbrand reached out. They're like, "Oh, if you're considering if you're doing coverage on Steam Machine, would you consider checking out our companion cube case?" I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, yeah, I'm happy to check that out." So they sent one over, and it was
What?
a production prototype, and they send it to a bunch of content creators. Like honestly,
Yeah.
some people, like if you go on YouTube and just search like dbrand companion cube, a bunch of people who don't even have Steam Machines have it. So they made a fair number of these pre-production prototypes. And I'll tell you two things about the pre-production prototype. One, the build quality was great. It wasn't like a 3D printed thing. It was definitely injection molded plastic. The mold
made
release.
molds?
They made like 14 molds, right? Injection molds, which is like, six
Oh my
figures
God.
worth of tooling. And they had to redo it because the mold release apparently that they use for the parts that contact the Steam Machine
Yeah.
left a grease on the hardware, and so it wasn't even their final product. Like they said, shipping versions, which obviously won't happen now, won't have this. So it was like pre-release stuff, but it looked industrial. They
Yeah.
had like fancy Portal aesthetic boxing. It was very elaborate box, and so I included a shot of it. I tried it out. It's very nice as a product, very nice thing. And then yep.
Do you think that they okay, so do you think that they actually made injection molds, like the
100%.
milled out? Or do you think it's
100%.
like 3D
No.
printed and they're using silicone molds
Nope,
and just doing rubber?
They
cast?
100 went to tooling because they wanted to. They were ready to ship. They were ready to manufacture. They probably had paid for a run of these. I mean, who knows, right? They could
God,
have
that's
taken
hundreds of
pre-orders.
thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, 6 figures easy for
Yeah.
tooling. And
Easy.
I think in their Reddit post they talked about having to do revisions, right? They did a whole promo shoot. I would say in terms of like having some sense of manufacturing, it was easily with R&D $200,000 to $300,000 worth of someone's time, a company's time, people's time that they put into this.
Okay, so we should get to the punchline because I bet people don't know this.
Yeah, so Steam Machine went for pre-order a week and a half ago when the embargo dropped. They went. There was a lottery system, and the same day, actually ahead of the review embargo, dbrand put up the landing page for pre-ordering this case. And I think
lawyers.
Yeah, and I think they said like 15,000 people expressed interest. I don't know how many people actually pre-ordered, but then less than a week later, they put up Reddit posts and people got emails saying full refunds. Our bad. We didn't get permission from Valve to make this product, which uses Valve IP, the weighted companion cube, and graphics that are very close to Portal graphics. And they had to take it down. And Valve reached out and said, no. And dbrand said, okay, I guess we're not making this anymore.
Wow.
And so not doing it. But the thing I haven't told anyone is, so
you have one.
I have one, and it's like this rare collector's edition. Yeah, right. Like I don't know, maybe like a dozen or 2 dozen of them were out in the world somewhere. But they sent over email a assembly video, just like shot with an iPhone. Just like if you have problems putting this together, here's how it comes together. And it's first of all, it was very easy. You just slide it in. Like it's not like replacing the side. You don't have to take apart the steam machine at all. It just literally just slides into this enclosure.
Does
Right.
it impede airflow?
No, it actually raises the bottom off of the ground.
Okay.
So it might help it in some way. But definitely doesn't impede the intake or the exhaust on the back.
Okay.
The back is just the valve logo. The same
It's just open. Okay.
the same back as what comes with Steam Machine. But the video they shared demoing how to install this case had it installed in a Steam Machine. They used
How did they get a Steam Machine?
They must have been a partner somehow or tied to a developer or something, but they had access to a real Steam Machine to make this product. And so my assumption is that they were partnered with Valve in some way to make skins or something,
Oh, wow.
and still made the choice to not get permission to make this very clearly Valve associated visually product. Like, who does that?
Like, it's such an own goal. That's just wild. Like it's one thing to make the fan design, because there's a bazillion of those out on 3D printing sites now, right? But then there's a whole other thing to like go through the process, because it's not an insubstantial time and energy and work investment to make injection molded plastic stuff.
Yep.
Is it multiple? Are all the different colors different pieces? Is that how it works? And then they assemble them?
That's right.
And it's a sleeve you just kind of lower down and then magnet on the front piece?
Magnet on the front piece and then bolt on a back plate. Yep.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. Well, congratulations on a 1 of 15 collectible there, Norm.
Well, the other thing is it actually, and we'll get to the Steam Machine, but even though it's small, it makes a small thing not really that small, as small anymore. So even aesthetically, it's very nice to look at. And obviously we're not selling it right now, but one of the appeals of Steam Machine is just how small it is. And now it's just a little less small.
And like, you'd think they'd know that, because when they did the PlayStation wings for the PS5 and they made the low profile ones that don't stick out over the top, and then Sony sent them the nasty gram and said, hey, stop selling these. Like that was making the big thing small, which makes sense to me. This is a whole, anyway, wild choices all around. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
Oh, I'm Norm.
Yeah. Our substitute Brad this week, Brad's still out on personal stuff. Our substitute Brad this week is one Norman Chan of tested.com and Adam Savage is Tested on YouTube. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Norm.
Oh, excited to be here.
I guess this is the season. This is the season of talking about Steam stuff. So once again, you're back. You have had access to a Steam machine, I think, longer than just about anybody outside of Valve at this point.
Or developers, but yeah.
I've had mine. Oh, that's where the dbrand folks got one. Is they must have seeded them to early developers.
Yeah, that's my assumption, is that they maybe knew a developer and was able to borrow one. But if they actually got one from Valve as a manufacturer of aftermarket like cases or something or skins,
base plates
that
or
would be
skins
crazy.
or whatever.
Anyway.
But yeah, so you've had I've had my Steam machine for a little bit over a week now. Valve was kind enough to send me the 2 terabyte kit with the controller, which is I think what they sent to everybody, it seems like. And I've spent a kind of a lot of time with it. Like, it's become one of the main ways I play video games right now. It's been hooked up in my living room. I hooked up to the monitor in the office for a minute just to try some stuff out. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through the whole thing, the good, the bad, how it works, what the kind of out-of-box experience is like. We're going to have to talk about pricing because it's unavoidable at this point. I think people who listen to this show know that pricing of all electronics that involve RAM and or flash memory are a shit show right now. But if you don't, well, we're going to talk about that. And then I have some questions from Discord and from the Blue Sky that people had sent in that we'll hit at the end if we have some time. And we have performance, the whole thing. So I guess let's just get right into it. I thought like the setup, the out of box and the setup for this was really nice. Like the box was. Did you get retail box? I assume.
Yeah. Retail
Yeah.
box. So 2 terabyte model, same as you, which they do a 512. There's 4 models, right? There's the 512 gigabyte and the 2 terabyte. $300 price difference, and then there's also the Steam controller pack end, which is like a $80 difference or something. Which is a little bit discount on Steam controller. And then you get with the 2 terabyte models, you get the faceplates too.
Yeah, so you get a wooden faceplate and a red cloth faceplate. I'm using the wooden faceplate right now. Are you a red cloth? Are you a black? Or are you?
See, it's not red, and I had this in my review, and people are shouted it out, but they're like, "Hey, it's an orange. It's a blood orange one. It's clearly a reference to Orange Box." And
yeah,
I'm like,
love orange.
Well, I am very familiar with Orange Box. You reviewed Orange Box for Max PC.
Orange Box, yeah.
I reviewed Orange Box for PC Gamer.
Really?
And yeah, oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
I went to Valve. I think we went at the same time. Oh no, you went right after.
I was there with Josh Norum. Yeah.
That's right. And we put Orange Box on the cover of PC Gamer magazine for the review. And do you remember the big controversy or the big hubbub?
Did you all mess up the orange?
We messed up the orange. We had old Pantone guides, and famously PC Gamer put out the review of Orange Box and had a more salmon-like color because it was a faded Pantone. And
we did the exact same thing at Maximum PC for a different topic, same orange, and we messed it up because because Future was too cheap to buy current Pantone guides. It turns
hundreds and hundreds of dollars even back then.
Yeah.
But that's to say, I have a very intimate relationship with that Valve Orange Box orange. I know that orange. I can spot it, and I'll tell you, the Steam Machine faceplate is not that orange.
It's rust. It's not. It's not like that. Orange Box orange is like a neon orange. It's fluorescent orange, and this is definitely not that. This is more. Look, this is some inside baseball, but this is closer to the orange that the Valve in their lobby, the wheel on that is painted. Although I think that's redder, probably.
That's more
than
red.
This.
Yeah, when you see like the red in the back of the valve on the back of the guy's head, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's more red. This is somewhere in between. So I don't know where they chose this color. I don't know why they have that like soft felt texture. That's the part that was confusing to me. Of course, I know they made the Orange Box.
Yes.
Let me tell you, listeners out there, this is not that orange.
Yeah, Norman Chan knows orange. The setup was real easy. You pop it out. The box was nice. The packaging was really good. Everything was really secure. It was 3 cables for me, power, HDMI, and Ethernet. You could do Wi-Fi as well if you want. And then I logged in it did an update. I logged in with the QR code from my Steam app, and I was there in Steam just like on my desktop. It was or on the Steam Deck. It was they've gotten good at this part of it, I think, since the Steam Deck came out.
Totally. Yep.
We've talked about the hardware a little bit. I gave some kind of first impressions last week because I got it the day before we recorded the episode. But it's Zen 4 CPU, RDNA 3.5 GPU. It's 6 CPU cores with 2 threads each, thermally limited to I think 30 watts. It's pretty low.
That's right.
And then the GPU is an RDNA 3.5, which is like a 7000 series GPU. With 28 compute units and 8 gigs of VRAM, 16 gigs of system RAM total. Do you know if you have a single stick or a 2-stick model? Did you look?
They're only doing the single stick. They're only doing.
They are.
Yeah. And this is a change from what we had learned back in November, and I actually got it wrong in my video review because I shot it before I did the disassembly. But in the disassembly, all the shipping models, at least they I don't know if they're even going to make an announcement if they get to do dual channel. But the 2 ways of thinking about it, and I think Gamers Nexus did a latest video doing some benchmarks. Single channel is like, single digit percentage slower in some compute tasks. But I guess if you want to go upgrade, because RAM is one of the places you can upgrade and you can buy another 16 gigs SODIMM, you could get up to 32 gigs easier than if you had 2 8-sticks.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a world where 16 gigs of RAM costs $200 or $300. It's nice to not have to buy an extra 16 gigs of RAM if you want to get to 32 gigs. I don't
see a lot of people doing that though. I mean, like,
I can't imagine.
No. For this type of machine, like, yes, you can run it in Linux desktop, but like 16 gigs is going to be plenty for most stuff, unless I guess people are buying something like this to not just use as a living room gaming PC, but to make it some type of semi-portable workstation.
Yeah, and we can talk about that. I played. I spent a fair amount of time using the Linux desktop on it the other day. I think that as somebody who's spent like I'm a 99% Linux user at this point, right? I think that idea that you're going to use this as a desktop with the immutable OS running in Steam OS is maybe not particularly realistic. We could talk about that later, but the hardware is capable. The thermal limits on the GPU and the CPU are very aggressive compared to even comparable like NUC style boxes, and definitely compared to like an ITX machine you would build yourself.
So
yeah.
we should talk about the choice here, because it's not an APU, right? They chose discrete CPU, discrete GPU, both from AMD. And while Valve won't say it, you can kind of suss out that what they've done is they've taken a binned CPU part that was an APU and disabled the GPU cores. And then maybe they, for the pricing, for the sourcing, they were able to get this version, that 28CU version of the 7000 series RDNA 3.5 to at that price point for this level of TDP, for that 110 watt on the GPU side, which is going to be your cap for your performance.
And it seems like that was a really strategic choice. So I did I've been playing a bunch of games on it. I've been playing like indie games, of course, run great on this. It's very performant. I also downloaded some PlayStation 5 games. So I downloaded like God of War Ragnarok and for Horizon Forbidden West and some stuff like that. That's a little more intensive. And I was seeing a solid like locked 60 frames per second on all of those games, right? Like I think that this choice to throttle the hardware was tied to noise in the living room, because the machine's really quiet even under full load.
Yeah.
But I think it's also like in the same way that the Steam Deck was spec'd to run current gen console games at a good frame rate at the 1280 by 800 display, this feels like it's spec'd to run current gen console games at 1080p to 4K, depending on what kind of scaling you want to use, and get decent performance out of that. Like this is a decent performance machine. This isn't like an enthusiast computing thing.
No. And the pricing's unfortunate, right? Because of supply chain stuff. But when they designed this, I think they really prioritized that form factor and the noise level, right? Super custom fan, custom fan mount, custom blades, and it is so quiet. That's the thing. Like, I think even it was hard to communicate in a video review the size of this thing. Like, if you have a Steam controller, if you have a gamepad, it's less wide than basically your gamepad, your Steam controller. Like 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches is tiny, right? It's tall. It's bigger than the Kleenex square, the cube tissue box. Slightly bigger than that, but not much bigger. And that's why when we go back to the Portal Cube thing, just even adding like an inch in any dimension is significant volume wise. It's like 3.8 liters.
Yeah. I have a dice tower thing that somebody printed for us back in the tested days. It's been sitting on the speaker by my TV for years, and it's 5 inches by 5 inches by 5 inches. And that now sits on top of the Steam machine, and like it looks like a little hat for the Steam machine. Let's see, it ships 512 gig or 2 terabyte storage. It has the same kind of eMMC slot that the Steam Deck has. So you can take a micro SD card, which also are phenomenally expensive now, and use those to store excess games if you don't want to open it up. If you do, like opening it up and getting to the SSD seemed pretty easy. You just pop it out and the slots on the bottom, but there is only one NVMe slot, so you can't add to it. You're just replacing the one that it ships with. And then I assume you have to go through the process of reinstalling SteamOS and that whole thing.
Yeah. So the external storage, the hot swappable storage, because it really is hot swappable. You can just plug it in and the library will recognize. That's not express speeds. So I think it's kind of capped at, I want to say like 100 megabits per second or megabits per second. So
it's not like the Switch 2, which uses the newer spec, right? This is the older.
Correct. Yeah. So, you're not going to be able to, and you wouldn't want to run, critical applications off of that. It's really just for game storage. It's fast enough for loading. The NVMe will fit the full width, 2280 size, and the cavity which it lives in, like as compact as it is, will fit NVMe M.2 SSDs with heat sinks to a certain extent.
So like not like there's multiple levels of heatsink. I want to say Crucial made a T700 that had like a 2-inch tall heatsink on it. That's not going to fit
Yeah.
But your normal, like a PlayStation 5 style SSD with a heatsink in it seemed to fit from what I was able to tell.
Yeah.
They're using a Qualcomm wireless chipset. Linux users will know we love MediaTek over here, so I'm glad that they used Qualcomm for that. We don't love MediaTek, just for the record. MediaTek sucks shit. But Airflow, they have a custom cooling solution for this thing. Basically, the whole box is looks like cooling fins. And did you do a teardown too? I saw the Gamers Nexus teardown.
Yeah.
So you should watch the teardown videos because it's a really fascinating piece of hardware. It seems like it's sucking a little bit air in the front, but mostly in from the bottom. Is that fair? And then blowing it out the back.
It's a combination, and that's why the feet, which is where the bolts are hidden in. If you want to do a disassembly, the 4 feet are raise it up off the ground, and so their big recommendation is definitely don't put it on carpet because a lot of it does come from the airflow. The airflow does come from the bottom.
Mhm.
The back feet actually has a little divider that connects the back feet to prevent recirculation. So the exhaust is
okay.
in the back, and you don't want to block the back, of course, but
Mhm.
the hot air that goes out the back, when you can't feel it, it doesn't come back underneath the steam machine to recirculate. So it's really well designed airflow wise, and really the noticeable thing is at load 30-watt CPU, and most games aren't CPU like heavy, but
Yeah.
that 110 watt max RPM, you're not going to hear it at all.
You
You
literally
really don't hear it.
I had to get right up on it when I was running God of War Ragnarok yesterday to hear anything. Just sitting in the living room on my couch 15 feet away, you couldn't tell it was on. On that front, I gotta say, like, I don't want to. It's a cliche to talk about the spouse approval factor here, but in terms of things that I've put it visibly connected to the TV over the years, my wife is like, this is way better than the dock that you had the Steam Deck on before.
No, and that's why they made this, right? Like,
Yeah.
so many people buy Steam Deck, and Steam Deck prices went up by $200, right? By 30%. But so many people dock the Steam Deck. The attach rate for the dock, and Valve just knows their sale numbers, but there are plenty of people who make tiny, third-party Steam Deck docks as well. It's just a great way to use the Steam Deck because you can stream from your tower over Ethernet, and streaming is just you can pump it out. But Steam Deck had some issues, just like even if you don't go into the Linux the desktop mode, you're not going to get full resolution. It's going to output just capped at like I think 1920, and even then the thermal design of Steam Deck, you're going to hear that exhaust, and it goes up the top too. So it's not really well designed for small cavities. And there's a whole argument that, you could build your own PC, like a laptop works as well, right, for living room. But I've tried putting a laptop, behind the entertainment center in the corner of the living room, and it's just not made for that. The giant power bricks that laptops come with, it's just really not family or, spouse friendly.
Having to dig it out to do to press the power button or whatever, like whenever I've done that in the past, even using like a NUC style machine, because I went through a thing with PC World a couple of years ago where we went through and tested a bazillion like Beelink and MSI and Asus NUC boxes, which are basically like Steam Deck hardware. It's an APU in a less thermally limited and less power limited box. So we installed Bazzite and SteamOS and a Holo ISO and all that stuff on them. And the experience was fine, but it wasn't great. It was good for streaming. Like that was the thing. But the problem with those was I couldn't get the cost to a point that it was in like the price range that felt okay for streaming. So like a streaming box felt like it should be $100 or maybe $200 at the outside.
Yep.
And if you were going to go more than that, you wanted something you could actually play games at 4K. But when you got to performance, it could do that. You're looking at $700 or $800 for the most part. So yeah, like the experience in terms of like how it is as a console, I was really blown away, right? From really simple stuff that actually the Steam Deck does this now too. I learned this the other day by accident because it didn't used to do this. You can wake up the Steam Deck with a PlayStation or Xbox controller, an external controller now, even on Bluetooth, which is the last time I tried that was probably more than a year ago, but it did not work for a long, long time. You can wake this up with a Steam controller. You can wake this up with a PlayStation controller. You can wake this up with an Xbox controller connected wirelessly.
Well, more importantly, you could wake up your TV that way too.
Yeah,
So
and it does
you could-
HDMI CC. Yeah,
That's it. Yep, you can, and that's one of the reasons that things that you're not necessarily going to get with a home built PC. And Steam Deck got it through the latest software channels, but you can wake up your TV with console style, and the one thing it
Change to the
doesn't
appropriate
do,
channel,
that's right.
change your receiver, your soundbar,
Yep.
or whatever. All of that stuff happens.
The one thing you can't do is there's no wake up on LAN. So, for
That's
example,
fine though.
well, it's one of the ways I would be using the Steam Machine, like when Steam Frame comes out, is to stream games maybe from it,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
maybe stream games from Steam Machine to Steam Deck, right? Because that's better power consumption on Steam Deck. I want all the bi-directional streaming possibilities, right? And so Steam Machine is in sleep mode because it's only going to consume like in sleep mode sub 1 watt.
Yeah.
And I would love the ability to power on Steam Deck and say, hey, wake up my Steam Machine over LAN and let me stream the game 6x the processing power. I'm actually going to get much better frame rates at the 1280-800 OLED, right? And then let it go back to sleep after 15 minutes when I'm done with my game.
It's interesting because there's like, this is a thing that Apple realized late in the Apple TV's life, is that having an always on box in the home is a real powerful thing for like their home automation stuff and all of that. And this gives Valve a similar place where you can have, hey, this is the machine that is the local cache for all of your game downloads or whatever it happens to be. I don't know that they're like, this feels like, I think a lot about the first year, what the first 2 years of the Steam Deck looked like and how that software evolved. And at the beginning, it was just like, oh, thank God the game worked. And by the end of the second year, you were like, yeah, I'm going to plug this into the TV. I'm going to stream from the office and I'm going to have my giant video card in the office, make my games look really awesome in the living room. I still feel like the Steam streaming is not always there.
Moonlight's better for sure, 100%. And it's not just the Valve, like they're so fast. It's a relatively small team for the size of the company they are, especially on the hardware side, right? And so they push out updates nonstop. I'm getting on Steam Machine, like we're getting almost daily beta updates, right? And you're going to get those updates because they can iterate so fast, and there are lots of bugs to fix. Like there are things with recognizing the aspect ratios and screen sizes. There's things on the front panel that the light that is the LED light strip that they need to figure that out because I can't get it dim enough to where it doesn't annoy the room sometimes.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's just broken for me. I get the brightness on it. But you're gonna have third-party stuff. I mean, people are getting Steam Machine in Asia right now, and the US it's got to be in the next couple of days. But you're gonna get like the equivalent of Decky on Steam Machine, and that's just gonna be great.
Yeah, it's I mean, the benefit of building on something that's open and actually shipping an open OS for this is like we're not going to see the benefit for that for a while until the hardware gets out in the world. But I think Decky is a good call out because the stuff you get with Decky Loader on a Steam Deck is a real plus up for the whole platform.
And Valve did really, I mean, one of the things that you get with Decky and all the emulation stuff, right? And that's the thing, so many people buying into the Valve hardware ecosystem have their Linux or third-party hardware-based emulation setups, and Steam Deck has been great for that. And while Valve won't talk about that or they don't care about it because they care about selling games on Steam Store, it's going to be Steam Machine is going to be a great machine for emulation.
Yeah, it's funny. The first thing I did when I booted into desktop mode was install Steam Grid DB and Moonlight. Those were the two things I put on, and then I mounted up a SMB share with all my stuff on it.
I want to talk about performance because I know you talked about some of the games you loaded up, and going back to hardware, right? Like they chose this specific level of CPU performance and GPU performance, but more importantly, they also chose 8 gigabytes of VRAM. And I would say the one sticking point, because the VRAM is tied to the GPU and the TDP load, right? Because and I think aside from the pricing stuff they couldn't anticipate or that they just couldn't control, the messaging was the thing they could control. And even back in November, they were talking like up to 4K, 60 FPS. And I think they, to some extent, had to say that because a lot of the console equivalents, PS5, PS5 Pro, are being sold as 4K machines. I think from a practical standpoint, if you're playing this even on, like I have a 77-inch OLED, I'm never playing the games native 4K out of Steam Machine or even on on my console style equivalents, 1440p is totally fine on that at a standard 12-foot distance or something, 10-foot distance.
I was gonna say, have they reached? I know AMD talked a couple weeks ago about doing FSR 4.1 on this era of hardware, which FSR 4.1 is it's kind of the parity. It finally gives AMD parity with DLSS on the current gen RDNA 4 hardware. Sorry, so we got too many 4s and 5s here. On the RDNA 4 hardware, you get like tensor core acceleration for upscaling and stuff like that, frame gen and all that. So you're not sacrificing performance to get the upscaling or the frame gen. They talked about rolling that out a couple weeks ago, but it's unclear if that's hit the Linux side yet. And I'm not seeing. Like the way Proton works, sometimes the FSR and DLSS settings get obfuscated in ways that are confusing. And I was curious, did you experiment with that stuff at all?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what the status
and
is?
This is another thing where timing really hurt them, right?
Yeah.
So to refresh for people, and I had to refresh this for myself too, because I'd been so much more familiar with DLSS side, right? And DLSS just in general has been better. I think more acceptable visually for me.
Yeah, the artifacting. So when I've done head-to-head comparisons with the FSR 3 and DLSS 4 or 4.5, the DLSS solutions generally are less artifacty. They have less weird stuff going on is the easiest way to say it. So
yeah. So FSR 2 gave you kind of like their upscaling, AMD's upscaling, which was fine. Like Cyberpunk used FSR 2. FSR 3, it added frame gen and
a kind of a latency
revise,
equivalent.
right? The low latency stuff and revise or upscaling. But you see a lot of games let you choose between 2 and 3 because the general consensus, and I hadn't done the testing on this, but the general consensus is visually 3 was impacted a lot.
Yeah.
Like you get better frame rates, but you just the quality modes were not as good as on 2.
And the fundamental problem with both of those is that AMD didn't have dedicated tensor hardware and still doesn't on the 3.5 stuff. So you were using the compute cores that the GPU uses to do like shaders and things like that. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in some of this stuff, which isn't great.
And so the machine learning based upscaling that was in FSR 4 was previously limited just to RDNA 4 class of hardware.
9000 series GPUs, yeah.
But as of last year, a DLL leaked that allowed FSR 4 to run on RDNA 3 hardware that people could inject themselves with Optiscaler. And so you got a better sense, like, one, hey, AMD, you're working on this. You can run FSR 4 and get those visual benefits on RDNA 3 hardware. And so I think 2 months ago, they announced, okay, it's actually coming. July was their time frame. And as we're recording this, it's like beginning of July.
It's
and
July
so
2nd, yeah.
Valve actually had to let reviewers know as a part of AMD's release, Steam Machine would also get FSR 4, but they just couldn't commit to the date that
timing.
Proton would get updated. But here's what happened. Reviews went out. The review embargo went out. FSR 4 dropped that same day on Proton Experimental. And so no one in the reviewers batch got a chance to, for the embargo,
branch,
compare FSR 3 and 4 on Steam Machine, and you can run it right now. So I have it. I have Proton, the experimental running FSR 4, and it's gonna be one of those things where if you don't care, like if you're not pixel peeping, if you're not playing this on a monitor, if you're just going on TV, the takeaway is you can now run FSR 4, which in many games is just you just turn FSR 3 on and you're running 4 in the background. You can run
Proton will handle that in the background, right? Yeah.
You can run performance performance-based upscaling, performance priority, but get the quality-based visuals.
Okay. So you're going from performance visuals to quality visuals at performance speed.
That's it. That's exactly it.
It's So I was gonna say I hadn't used a lot of FSR stuff outside of like some specific testing we did at PC World. Uh, I'm mostly, in my experience, I'm generally just playing at 1080p and letting the TV upscale, or
Old
using
school.
look, man, it's fine. The thing I guess my point is, when I was sitting in front of the monitor and I have a 4K monitor sitting 15 inches from my face or 24 inches from my face, I notice this much more than I do in the living room when I'm sitting 10 feet away from it.
And you're talking about aliasing, right? You're talking specifically edges, edge sharpness.
Specifically edge sharpness, and then also the artifacts that come with the AI upscaling stuff.
I think that's the stuff that's more noticeable on the big TVs. I think you're right. Like edge sharpness on TVs. Honestly, 1080, 1440p is like a really nice sweet spot where it feels like, feels good for a big 65 or 77 inch TV. But 1080p on a standard 50 inch TV is going to be 55 inch TV is going to be totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's the artifacting. It's where previously in performance mode on FSR 3, you get the shimmers, you get the weird
Occasional
shadows,
blocks, you get
the ghosting and the movement.
Yeah.
And it depends on game to game, but it depends on what the internal resolution that what the game's gonna be comfortable running at to get to your frame rates. And if you're going from 720p to 1440, it didn't look good before FSR 4.
Norm, it's also worth reminding you, because you've been to the house in a minute, but we are still, my wife is really attached to the ancient Panasonic TV. So we are still, every time I've tried to bring an LCD or an OLED in here, she's looked at it and she's like, yeah, I want the old one back. This doesn't look as good, because she's used to that, the motion on the Panasonic. I'm going to have to buy a phenomenally expensive OLED to get the refresh rate that she likes on the TV. So my living room testing has been exclusively at 1080p, which it turns out you can run native 1080p on this thing and it's rock solid.
Oh yeah, it's 80, 90 FPS, no problem.
Yeah. So I did some benchmarks because you could get it out of you. The thing I found is that it's kind of hard to get it to unlock the frame rate, actually. By default, it locks to whatever your refresh rate is on the monitor, it seems like, up to I think 120 or 144 hertz. Shadow of the Tomb Raider ran at 60 hertz no matter what I did. Like the benchmark, I unlocked it on the Steam side, I unlocked it in the game, I turned off VSync, all of that stuff. It loves 60 hertz. There's nothing I could do to change that. Cyberpunk, I was seeing 74.5 frames per second on the RT low setting at running at 1080p, which was like, RT low is basically reflections and puddles and stuff like that. It's not the full, obviously it's not the full overdrive path tracing mode. This is not a machine to run full path tracing.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, this is a PS5 launch, not a PS5 Pro, is the way I kind of think about it. Doom the Dark Ages, again, not the full path tracing, but the Steam Deck path basically is 61.5 frames a second average. And then everything else I played with the ticker was basically locked at 60 hertz. Like I couldn't find something. God of War was solid 60. I never saw sags. The performance has been kind of remarkable in that the frame pacing feels really, really good for a Linux machine sitting in my living room plugged up to a TV.
The kind of rule of thumb for I've been telling people is you can play 1080 with FSR 4 now on, because I think we've passed the point with FSR 4 where I would feel comfortable in performance mode just leaving that on for everything. 1080 ultra settings, 1440p high settings, and 4K low to medium settings. Turn ray tracing off. That's my recommendation. And then you're going to get that hits your 50 to 60 for everything.
So it's funny, I was playing this and I tried, I want to say 007 was probably the newest big kind of AAA game that had come out at the time I got the Steam machine. And, running the basic, just default version of Proton that they recommend, which I think it's the most recent one, I can't remember. It ran great. No problems, no weird artifacts. Everything's running great. At 4K, I was running FSR performance, I think. And it was a very playable 55, 60 frames per second across the board. That game doesn't have ray tracing. It still looked really nice on the TV.
And these games don't have Steam Machine profiles now. I mean, that's another thing that developers, even if they weren't optimizing for Steam Machine, they were creating performance profiles that made it easy. And so in this early stage, you're still going into settings, and this is where it feels more like a PC experience and a console experience. I'm going in and kind of like making my trade-offs and looking at the VRAM consumption and saying, where do I want, what type of filtering do I want? Do I want the tech? And like at living room, it's like the things I want are textures and draw distance and textures at 1440. And some post processing I can turn off, but modern games, Indiana Jones runs great.
Yeah,
First Light
runs
great.
I was shocked at Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages, honestly, because both of those, at least at launch, were ray tracing only, full path tracing only on the PC, and the experience. I mean, they've done some pre-lit modes now for Steam Deck and for lower end hardware. Game ran great, still looks really good. The big thing I noticed on the performance stuff generally is that it's when I was sitting at the desktop specifically, I did notice that I wanted to run the better quality FSR. I didn't actually run stuff at 1440p and scale it up. I did, which is I think the quality profile at 4K. Is that right? It goes from performance is a 4x upscale from 1080p to 4K, and I think quality is from 1440p or thereabouts to 4K. And it's funny. The benefit of running the upscaling stuff is much greater when you start with more pixels versus the Steam Deck, where you're starting with like 640 by 480 or something like that to upscale to 1280 by 800.
Yeah, yeah. And not every game supports this, right? Like AMD has their list of what FSR 3 games, FSR 4 games, and you assume that gets expanded. And it is fundamentally with RDNA 3. Without those tensor cores, doing a different style of upscaling. I think it's still int 8, but it's not the full RDNA 4 upscaling.
Well, one of the things I did hit that was a little bit of a frustration is that some games, I want to say Capcom was the big offender here, was detecting and it does this on PC as well. If you're using Linux on the PC, it says, oh, hey, this is a Steam Deck, and it locks you into a Steam Deck mode when it sees you're running on Linux. So it assumes you're running a 1280 by 800 screen and makes some downstream choices around ray tracing and upscaling and stuff like that don't make sense in the new context.
Yeah, there are two things that every Steam Machine owner should do is one, disable on a system level the auto detect as Steam Deck setting, which is in Steam OS. You could uncheck a box, do it on a per game setting, but Valve knows this. Like the Steam Machine, its name was Steam Deck in the for the review units in terms of the game profiles, and then also out of box they've capped the resolution to 1080 as a default. I think just so people get good performance. But you set your display resolution to whatever max whatever your output resolution is. For me, I set that to 1440 120.
Okay. So let's see. I think that's the last thing to talk about, and I feel like we've talked about this to death. It has all the same problems that every other Linux gaming machine is going to have, in that anti-cheat that the developers choose not to run on Linux isn't going to work. So you're not going to get Call of Duty, you're not going to get Battlefield 6, you're not going to get Riot Games, you're not going to get Fortnite. Stuff like Apex Legends and the games, the Helldivers. The companies that choose to support Linux with their anti-cheat, Embark with Finals and Arc Raiders, all work, but no Destiny 2 or Marathon because Bungie doesn't like Linux apparently. So that stuff remains an issue. I kind of don't anticipate them selling enough of these just because of the pricing and the RAM situation that it's going to move the needle in any kind of meaningful way. But maybe one day Microsoft and Bungie and Epic and Riot will decide that they want to support Linux gamers. Did you spend any time on the desktop, Norm?
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to Steam Deck on desktop, right? It's KDE. I mean, they got rid of the Steam Deck logo stuff, so it's just a standard KDE logo. But it's not a production machine for me because there's just not the applications I need for work. But I had it plugged into my monitor, and for web browsing, for just downloading stuff, it's so easy now. So
yeah, the big challenge for me sitting down and using it is the immutable nature of the OS. And the idea there is that the core bits of the OS, the basically everything but your home folder and which is where games are stored and where your profile stuff happens and where you save your work and things like that, is an unwritable partition. And when you get an update from Valve, then it just rewrites, it just dumps over new information on top of that partition, just replaces it wholesale, the main brunt of the OS. And then things like your Steam folder where your games are installed, and like your screenshots folder where your screenshots are saved, or if you're if you're doing desktop stuff, your documents and downloads and all that stuff lives in a different subvolume that is writable and does persist between system updates.
And that's more like the consolification of the OS update system, right? That you're downloading packages and rewriting the whole thing every time you do.
I mean, I would say that this is the trend in OSs that aren't Windows. Apple's been moving in this direction for like 5-6 years now, to the point that like the Apple OS updates replace like the brunt of the OS and just leave your home folder untouched. The big change is that most Linux applications that you install natively, like if you're installing stuff from the Arch repositories or the Arch user repository, they're going to want to install somewhere in the root of the drive that's going to get blown away every time you do an update. So as a result, Valve ships the Discover app and makes that front and center, which mostly deals with Flatpaks, which are kind of like containerized applications that include all the bits and pieces, and then those will live in your system folder, in your home folder, rather than the system root. I think that's fine for light use computing, for like Chrome OS tile. Hey, I'm just using the browser mostly. If you get into more complicated workloads, if you're using stuff like OBS or using DaVinci Resolve or anything that has actual real lift behind it and requires access to the file system or access to specific hardware, that becomes a kind of sticking point. It's not insurmountable, but I don't like, I could see this being a kid computer. I don't see this being a computer I'm ever going to use on my day-to-day, partly because of the horsepower, but mostly because of the immutable nature of the OS.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a little bit about kind of the console-y stuff. We touched on this a little bit, but things like that HDMI CEC, when I was looking at this and I looked at the hardware, I was like, oh, okay, I can spec a machine out that's like this. And I think everybody who did a video almost did that exercise. And I of all those, the one that Steve did over at Gamers Nexus, I think was the most realistic in terms of like what you're going to get that's comparable to performance, given the throttling and the cooling and all that stuff. And I want to say his price at the time, which probably has changed, was $60 or $70 less than the retail price for the 512 gig model. And to me, that's the interesting question, right? Is like, can I build a machine as quiet as this that sits in my living room? I actually don't think so, right? I'm good at building quiet machines. If I want to build something that's as quiet as this and as performant as this, it's going to be a lot more expensive. And I'm also not going to get the benefits like the being able to turn it on by pressing the button on the controller from across the room. I'm not going to get the stuff like the MMC slot that just seamlessly connects. I don't know that I'm ever actually going to use that, but that feels like a nice thing to have. And it's not going to be a 6-inch by 6-inch cube. It's going to be the size of a Fractal Terra or like a small IT. I can't build an ITX box as small as this thing.
Yeah. I mean, you start talking about liters, like most small form factor, most people are in the 10 to 15 liters, and that's more than like triple, like quadruple the volume of this. And yes, this is a cube, but like I think people are just underestimating how small and how quiet this thing is. And I think the exercise of building a similarly performing computer is like it's fine as an exercise. But most people, if you're going to spend $1,000+ on a gaming PC, you're spend the extra $200 just for the better performance. You're going to want to level up and step up, and that's where the more interesting comparison is like something like the Framework Desktop, because that's a sub 5 liter machine, and that's Strix Halo, and so that's your alternate reality. What if Valve chose Strix Halo APU, which costs more from a bill of materials standpoint, but is more performant than the 28CU 110 watt GPU, 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Strix Halo gets that 32 gig minimum of shared memory, and so it scales better. And even if you're not using it then you're talking about, okay, well then for a gaming machine, that's a lot. That's like $1,300, $1,500 for something that's going to live in your living room that you might not use for,
Oh, it's way more than
let's just
that.
say AI workloads or whatever that people would be investing on a small form factor for a desktop. Your PC equivalent of a Linux equivalent of a Mac Mini.
The 32 gigabyte Strix Halo machines are way more than $1,400 at this
Really?
point. Also,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness, that's crazy.
like I'm looking at the GMK Tech. This one has okay. So the problem is they come in, the AI people like them, so they're doing buttloads of RAM. A 64 gig model is $2,400. So
Ooh,
I
yeah,
think
32 gigs would be a good sweet spot there
yeah.
for gaming and PC. And this is the reason that another reason that Steam Machine exists is for SteamOS. Like along with the release of this device, SteamOS 3.8 now gets ability to install on the desktops, running AMD hardware pretty easily. It becomes a competitor to Bazzite.
It's interesting because like I've been thinking about who I would recommend install SteamOS at this point versus who I would recommend. So let's take a moment back. I think that SteamOS makes a lot of sense in the context of these machines, the Steam Deck and the Steam Machine. I don't know that it makes sense in a DIY system. I think that the Bazzite people have done a really good job of building something that's generally accessible to most PCs, including people who have NVIDIA graphics cards, and also that are designed to work better. Like they handle things like bootloader and things that I'm curious. I haven't full disclosure, I have not installed SteamOS on a machine in the current since they released it a couple weeks ago. But I am pretty skeptical about dual booting on a Linux machine with Windows on a SteamOS machine. And Bazzite has that stuff locked down. It's really good. So like I don't know that it's the short. I think more interesting to me is what is Asus going to do? What is Lenovo going to do with a NUC style small sub 3-liter box using an APU with SteamOS? And I think that the other thing I'm curious about is when they start selling the integrated hardware controller for the Steam controller. If on iFixit, if we're going to be able to hack that into existing machines
to
have built-in Steam control plus. Like, I didn't actually. I meant to take it apart and look. I forgot when I had it open the other day to look at this. Do they have I wonder if they're jumping straight into a power lead off of that daughter board so that it's getting always on power and then also is triggering the boot sequence. But I don't remember.
I'd have to look at the footage. It's 2 Wi-Fi radios, 1 Bluetooth, and 1 dedicated Steam controller on the top left, I want to say. But I want to say it's this, all the radio wires go to the same plate, and it's two wires. So one must be power. I don't think it's dedicated power. I don't know. That's a good question.
I wonder if they have I guess I wonder if they have like an I2C bus or something like that that's doing the communication, or if it's anyway, TBD. But yeah, it's much more console-y than I expected. It's much more console-y than the Steam Deck was at launch I think in all the important ways. And
to go back, without even having to buy iFixit parts, I've seen people build small form factor PCs after Steam controller came out and try to embed the dongle on the inside, just wire USB cable into the cavity of their case and just have the receiver there. If you do that, make sure you put electrical tape over the contacts.
Oh God, yeah. You don't want to weld that to your case,
or start a fire.
Yeah, or start a fire. Okay, so pricing and lottery, like the pricing is hard. Like this to me feels like it was meant to be a $750 kind of entry, $750 entry point. And the price of RAM, the price of VRAM, the price of the SSD, all conspired over the last year. I mean, I assume, I assume the people listening to this podcast are part of the thin layer of sea foam at the top of the ocean of uninformed consumers that know that RAM is 4 times more expensive than it was this time last year. I don't, judging by the reaction to your video and the videos I watched on this, I don't think the vast majority of people understand that, and they are thinking this is $100. This is going to be a $500 or $600 box.
We'll talk about timing, because after they announced price and reviews dropped, a week later, Microsoft jacked up prices, Apple jacked up prices, and so you're the first one you take the brunt of that. coming up with unappealing and unattractive price, but it looks more attractive a week later relative to other hardware, and maybe like and then also PlayStation just yesterday, sunsetting physical discs,
Yeah.
right? So like it's like Steam Deck today maybe isn't like financially more attractive than anything else a week ago, but you get a better understanding of where the market's going.
I will say, Norm, we went to a Giants game last week. I think I told the story on Nextlander. We were at a Giants game, and we were in the bleachers out in right field, and the guys sitting behind us were like, "Hey, what do you think about that Steam machine?" Unfortunately, this happened while I was taking the kiddo off to get a sundae at the end of the sixth inning. So Gina was sitting there. She was listening. She's like taking notes. She's like, "Oh yeah, okay." But like they were like, "Hey, it's expensive, but this is way cheaper than I'm going to get a PC for otherwise." And they were all talking about wanting to build it. I wish I had known this before we left the game, because I would have totally interrogated them about the kind of games they wanted to play on it, and like if they knew that COD wasn't going to work and all of this stuff. But just the fact that they were having this conversation in like, I've never had an incidental conversation about the Steam Deck in the last 5 years, right? The fact that this is broken through at that level, that people are talking about it just like normal dudes at the baseball game, I was kind of surprised by. So,
well, think about the success of the Steam Deck, right? There was nothing on the market like Steam Deck when that came out. And
I mean, there was stuff out of China, but it was not.
Yeah,
it was not
you're
accessible.
Right. Like the GPD stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
But like Valve made a really even when it was rumored, it was Valve's Switch handheld, right? But it ended up being so much more than that. And the big success of Steam Deck is that, one, it allowed you to play this existing library of stuff that people had invested in on the go, which you could never do, right? Before from your Steam library. And two, it made Proton, like over the many years it's come out, it made that a non-question, a non-issue. And so the big success of Steam Machine, is that now they've put that on the desktop. And if you compare it to the Steam Machine we saw, what was it, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago, Valve with Linux gaming is like they've achieved kind of what they set out to do, is to not have compatibility be a thing you have to really worry about. Certainly not for old games, but for most new non-multiplayer new games.
Well, and they're getting enough market share now that people are actually paying attention to it before launch, even the bigger folks. The other thing the pricing feels high. It feels bad. I think it's a unfortunate reality of the time in which we live. If you don't like it, write a nasty letter to Sam Altman, I guess, because it seems like they're the driver of the problem.
I mean, the thing I go back to is, if Valve knew, like obviously they were trying to reach a certain price point, and maybe internally they felt this size, this performance, 750 or whatever it was as they originally planned it, was a great sweet spot. A little bit of a premium over consoles, PS5 equivalent, but but it will last for this long. It moves the ball forward for SteamOS, and it serves this need right now. If they knew that prices were going to go up by a third, like, would that have changed their allocation of memory? Would that have forced them to say, okay, maybe if it was going to be over $1,000 anyway, if it was going to be $1,300 anyway, should we have invested in 12 gigs of VRAM to make it last a little longer? Because
I don't think
they have put things like like a audio head jack in, or different Thunderbolt on here. Like, would they have allocated the materials differently?
I think for me, I think their focus has always been on what's the cheapest thing we can sell that will play current gen console games well. And with that in mind, I can't imagine them changing too much. I think it's funny, the backhanded compliment on this is that the high price of RAM, I think that the console vendors are looking really closely at how this is going, because if it doesn't sell out, if it doesn't sell super well, then it's going to make them gun shy about $1,000 consoles for next generation. Because just to be clear, that's what we're looking at, is that PS6 at $1,000, and should there be another Xbox, $1,000, which I think is going to extend this console overlap period way longer than we've ever seen. Like, the last one already went long because of the pandemic. I think this next one will see a much longer cross-platform, cross-generation overlap time than we ever have before.
In terms of future proofing, the way I think about it is this a machine that you're going to buy to play GTA 6? And for this performance, the answer I think is no. Like this
Dude,
is not.
do we even know what GTA does GTA 6 have ray tracing? We don't know. I assume so.
It's going to run on current gen hardware, but I think
Yeah.
GTA has always been like a game to bridge generations of hardware. And for PC gamers who want to have the best version of GTA when they get the chance to play it, like I think it's hard to say spend $1,300 on a machine or $1,100 on a machine that you're going to compromise your GTA 6 experience on.
I think that this will like if the launch PlayStation and the Xbox Series S are the low bar for what your GTA 6 experience is, I think you're going to get exactly the same thing here.
That's fair. Yeah. But I would want more.
Well, yeah,
I would want to turn textures from low to high.
Here's my question: are you going to play GTA 6 on a PlayStation when it comes out later this year? Or are you going to wait until the PC release 2 years from now?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like they also changed the release. I'm going to play it on PS5 Pro.
Yeah,
I mean that's the best possible way to play it when that launches. So I'm not going to wait 2 years.
Yeah. I thought the lottery was interesting. They rolled out a lottery scheme. This is the eternal battle against scammers and scalpers, I think, more than anything. It seems like you expressed interest. They assigned you a number randomly based on what you're in. Then they put you in the highest number slot that you fell. If you expressed interest in multiple SKUs, the one you stayed in is the one that you were closest to the top of the list on after that initial period. And then they're emailing people as they get allocations. And there's a lot of tea reading going on in the subreddits about who's getting what when and which models they have more of and all that. But it seems impossible to know from outside.
Demand is more than supply. That much is clear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the argument that they should have priced it lower or taken it at priced it at a loss, I completely understand why they did not do that, because obviously demand is there.
I look, I don't think in the modern era, I don't think in the current era, in the age of tariffs and exorbitant RAM and storage prices, I don't think anybody's going to sell anything at a loss. Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Valve. I think looking at the prices and looking at the BOM and looking at the terror of tariff prices and looking at how they've raised the Steam Deck prices in the last year, I really, really don't think this doesn't feel like they're making a ton of money on the hardware, especially when you factor in warehousing and shipping and the risk of tariffs at any given moment.
I suspect it's as much as cost as they could make it, and they're eating the R&D, basically, the people time.
And there's enough padding that if RAM prices go up, they have one RAM price increase without having to raise prices, and then we'll see a price increase if that happens. As
suppliers
always,
just won't they can't negotiate, right?
Yeah.
They can't say we're buying this amount. Suppliers will just say no, we'll ghost you.
Yeah, and I think the expectation, my recommendation to all of this is the same as anytime somebody asks me if they should buy hardware right now, which is like, if you want to buy it in the next 2 years, it's not going to be cheaper than it is today, which is kind of grim. Let's see. Do we have time for a couple questions, Norm? Do you have a couple more minutes?
Let's take up questions, and then I'll give my one final thought on the thing I wish they made.
Okay, final thoughts. I like this. So M. Bergs from Blue Sky asked, how are the console-like aspects, like Wake from Sleep, background game updates? We didn't talk about that. Game suspend. We should talk about that. He says, I hook my PC up to my TV pretty often, but it's always a big hassle. Something different breaks every time. I love the game suspend thing. It's my favorite thing about the Steam Deck, because I can play a game like TerraTech Legion that doesn't really have a pause or resume or save. I just put the thing to sleep. This works the same way. I haven't had any failures on that yet.
So it does and it doesn't, right? Because unlike the Steam Deck, you don't turn it off. It's always plugged in. It doesn't run on a battery, right? And so while SteamOS supports that game suspend, if you put it into sleep mode, the game suspend doesn't resume the same way.
Oh, no, it did for me.
Like if you go to sleep and then you go back into the game, I had to reload a game. Okay, I gotta double check that.
It may vary on the game. Like I did. Yeah. So I was playing Indiana Jones yesterday. I put it to sleep. I came back like 30 minutes later. It was exactly where I left off with no problem. The I didn't try that with a ton of different games. I'm sure that there's suspend mode for games is a nightmare for a whole host of reasons, mostly related to the GPU turning off and dumping whatever is in memory. So,
UI, the main UI, I still think is not as console friendly, user friendly as a console UI. I think it's like that's the weakest point of Valve's design is their UI. Is they make it's not like a phone UI. It's not reactive in that way. And the design language, I guess, is consistent with Steam Deck. But I had this same issue with Steam Deck. Is that like it is cluttered and it is still intimidating for people who come from the console experience.
I think so. It's funny. I set my daughter up with an account on the Steam Deck, on the Steam machine rather, earlier today because she was like, "Hey, does this mean does this thing let me play my Steam games in the living room?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." She's like, "Oh, I want to do that." I would put it below the PlayStation and probably below Nintendo on the Switch.
Oh,
too.
Definitely below Nintendo. Yeah, Nintendo's that's the gold standard. My 5-year-old can power on Switch 2 and launch Just Dance with no problem.
That's true.
And the 5-year-old with the Steam machine, it's like accidentally clicking onto the news tiles and the update tiles and random things.
So I think it's better than the Xbox though. I think the Xbox experience is abysmal. Honestly, the last time the Xbox had a good UI was probably like 2009. So the background updates, it does the same thing that the Steam Deck does, where it's like, hey, you're downloading stuff. Do you want to keep going in the background when you try to turn it off? And I think that's the way the Switch works now. I think the Switch pops a similar prompt when you do that.
There's a whole splash screen that it goes to when you activate sleep mode, but you still have a download queue where it just shows the bar, and then obviously the LED light shows the download progress bar, and then it'll go to sleep after that. And that's all configurable too. So you can say, just go to sleep, or you can say, let me download while I'm in a game, and I'll take the performance hit, which Steam Deck wouldn't let you do because there was too much of a performance hit. So that background, and this is again the modern PC gaming. There's so many downloads. I get patches for everything.
Yeah. The other thing, it does do the thing where it downloads shaders in the background, so you're not compiling shaders necessarily. I think I actually don't know that I've seen that on everything. I think I've seen that on a handful of things, and I wonder if that's tied to the Steam Deck backwards compatibility.
Had so much shader compilation, like especially with the new patches and the new FSR4 stuff. Just like shaders.
I will say it doesn't do the thing where it wakes up in the middle of the night to download the patches for you, which I kind of wish it did. I wouldn't mind having a fresh, like powering it on in the morning and having everything up to date without me having to download it.
Scheduled wake or something. Yeah.
That's the thing that the consoles do, and it's quite nice. The last thing is it does let you do things that the consoles do. It lets you change your TV volume or your soundbar volume or your receiver volume, which is really nice. The interface for that isn't great. I'm sure they'll work on that over time because I think that's a relatively new feature to the Steam OS front. But yeah, that's pretty much, those are the big things for me. I hope that the update cadence slows down after it's available to general public, because right now, even in the stable channel, I'm getting an update or two every day, which is a bit much.
One analogy I have, and it's not the most flattering one, is so much of it is built off of the Linux architecture that they're only surfacing so much of that in SteamOS as a UI. Like I had this same issue with Steam Deck, is that you have to go into desktop mode sometimes to get to the deeper settings, especially for audio, like configuring 5.1 sound and what type of audio speaker setup you have, and not getting your vocals to your center channel and that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's best configured in, and sometimes only configurable in the desktop mode. And it feels like, like Windows when they reskin control panel and they gave you, Windows 10 friendly, family friendly control panel, but they still hid the real control panel.
Yeah.
Over underneath that. It feels like that. Like you want to get to the real meaty parts of the configuration stuff, but that's really only in desktop mode. And what they present to you in SteamOS, the big picture mode, when you boot that up, is sometimes not everything you need to get to, everything you want to get to.
So in fairness, I didn't have to boot into desktop mode until I went over there to see. Until I wanted to install Moonlight. Honestly, was the big thing that got me to do that. And I plugged in a wireless, like a Microsoft keyboard that has a trackpad on the side, and that worked great for that experience. I I haven't done anything complicated with the audio routing. Like I hooked a DualSense up to it, but I haven't tried to use the headphone port on that. I think probably not putting a headphone port on the Steam controller is a deliberate choice, because that makes the audio routing configuration and complexity really, it's like it multiplies that complexity a lot. Let's see, I've got another question from Humanity Plague. They wanted to know, do you think the apples to apples comparison of how does this compare to a PS5 is actually valid? Both things seem to be going for vastly different aims.
I mean, from a performance standpoint, like that's a safe comparison to say like it performs like a PS5 but a little better, especially with FSR 4.
Yeah.
You know, it has like, you know, borders that PSSR stuff that you got with PS5 Pro. So I'd say, yeah, like performance wise, it's fair comparison, but the person in the market for PS5 is not the person in the market for Steam Machine.
I think that's right. It's funny. One of the things that the guys at the baseball game were talking about was how good Steam sales are. My wife she doesn't buy games on Steam, so she doesn't know, but she was like, hey, they were talking about Steam sales being really good. Is it better than everything else? I was like, oh God, yeah, you have no idea.
That's their entire business.
Yeah. That's like, hey, we're going to race to the bottom on pricing for games. Let's go.
Build the library.
Let's see. People wanted to know, I have this written down, but I don't have the username, so I apologize. Somebody asked how it works with mixed mode controllers. So if you're like using a Steam controller, an Xbox controller, and a PlayStation controller, how does that work? I didn't actually test that. Did you take a look at that?
Yeah, absolutely, because there's a Bluetooth radio and the Steam 2.4 gigahertz. So you can use both. It does up to 4, just like the Chongle, up to 4 Steam controllers. And so I have one Steam controller plugged wirelessly connected to that, and then the Bluetooth is slightly noisier, but I have like my Stadia controller and an Xbox controller as 2 and 3. So
Okay.
like playing Lego Batman right now, doing split screen. I'm on a Steam controller and the kid is on Xbox controller.
Okay, that sounds good. Miguel Berger is in the Discord, asked, what does the vent exhaust smell like? It doesn't have the flux smell of the Steam Deck.
It doesn't. No.
So I think that's probably let's see. The last one is how many USB controllers are there in the box? I didn't actually look at that. I meant to do it when I had the thing open last night, and I forgot to switch over and LS USB it. But I don't know how many root hubs they have. There's only 4 ports. Well, there's 5 ports because there's 2 USB-A on the front, 2 USB-A on the back, and 1 USB-C. And some of those are USB 2, and some of them are 3.3.
That's right. The ones in the front are 2.0, and the ones in the back are 3. And the USB-C is not Thunderbolt. So I would assume 3 controllers.
I'm not surprised that they didn't do Thunderbolt on this. Honestly, that adds so much expense, and I don't know that any normal people are going to do it. Norman Chan, anything? Oh, let's hear that final take.
Oh, yeah. So
is this a hot take? Do I need to like get the asbestos gloves out, or do I need to put the fire suit on?
I don't know if it's that hot of a take. But Steam Machine, I think it's gonna be, it is what it is. In using the Steam Machine and in using the Steam Deck as a living room PC and as primarily a streaming device, it made me realize the thing I want, and I know Valve will not make this because they got burned so badly from the first iteration, is a modern take on a Steam Link box. And I know you talked about, Will, you built, you tried to figure out, if you wanted to build a dedicated streaming box for like $200, what would that look like?
Yeah.
Right. Like the analogy I have is the Steam Frame. So Steam Frame is still coming out, hopefully, by the end of summer, right? That's their next hardware device they're working on. But the Steam Frame, interestingly, is a device that
it's the VR
made
headset
to run,
for folks who don't know.
Yes, right. It's a VR headset, and we're not going to get into the architecture of it running ARM and in addition to Proton. But the idea with the usability of Steam Frame is you can run games locally on it. Some games, right? You can run games flat screen. You put on the VR headset, but you run like Hades 2 or something, or like a 2D game, or maybe a Xbox 360 or Xbox One era game locally on it. At least that's the hope. Like you can run something that's just like a little underpowered than what the Steam Deck could run. But if you were for a more modern game or higher fidelity, it's primarily as a streaming device. Is that the set-top box version of that philosophy is kind of what I want from Valve, which would be the Steam Deck. Right. I want a Steam Deck without the screen or the controllers. I want a Steam Deck in a Apple TV size box with an SoC on there, and maybe it's running ARM, and that where I can run locally at 1080, 4040, or 4K a game like Hades, right? Where I just want to run locally, don't want to have it on network, and maybe a lot of like emulators or whatever. But for anything that's going to be at high resolution, for anything that's going to be modern, stream it from the desktop gaming PC I already have
Yeah.
in my house, and have that cost like $200 to $300. 200, $250 or something. I feel like would be a good sweet spot for
NVIDIA
that.
Shield price is totally fine, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
NVIDIA, yeah, exactly. Right. I want that type of box where it can run most things, old games, 2D games locally, but really it's designed as a streaming box, and then have Valve focus on optimizing streaming.
Well, so
Steam Link streaming needs work.
Okay, I think you and I and Gordon, when I was helping Adam clean out Gordon's stuff at PC World earlier this year, he had like a stack of 6 Steam Links that he'd bought when they were clearing them out. And I think I can't remember if it was you and I were there. I was there for a VR thing when I was working on Foo, but I was up there and I was like, man, I love the Steam Link. This thing is my favorite thing you guys have ever made. You got to do a new one that supports newer Wi-Fi, yada yada. And they were like, hey, you want more Steam Links? I got you Steam Links, and rolled out like a half dozen. We're like, take as many as you want. I don't think they're going to make another Steam Link.
No, they got burned by it. Like, it didn't sell well, right? Like, and that's because it was tough to sell a $100 box that people could get that feature as an application on whatever set-top box on their TV, on their Apple TV. And that's kind of how Valve thinks about it now. But if you're supporting it as an app, one, it doesn't have enough support, I think. The UI for Steam Link, I think, is like terrible.
It's terrible. It's really bad.
It's so bad. And you're not optimizing for decoding hardware. Like, if you look at the SoC that you can get, that people are, Qualcomm, whoever, are making for phones, you get AV1 decoding. There's next-gen stuff that are made for mobile that's going to give you high bandwidth and faster low latency decoding. The Valve can put some engineering on, both on the hardware and the software side, and then build in things like, Steam controller support, so you don't have to, so you have like the benefits of that, integrated 2.4 gigahertz receiver like Steam Machine does, and put it in an even smaller form factor, even quieter, lower power consumption box. I paid $250 for that.
Well, and my hope is that the FEX, the Steam Frame focus, because they listed the Steam streaming as a selling point on that thing, right? Which is the first time it's been more than like also you can do this weird thing for weirdos. And my hope is that the focus on that will make that experience smoother, because the problem isn't that it doesn't work. Like, when it's good and it works, it's great. It's really, really good. It's really easy. The problem is that there are a million edges, which, like, they have a proven plan for fixing the million edges at this point. Like, they have a proven use case for that, where it's how they fixed Proton. They looked at every time they found a bug in a high profile game, they fixed it, and then that had downstream fixes for another 100 games that had a similar pipeline and similar pathway. I apologize. I'm the people next door are having their yard crew come, so it's loud now. But the thing that I wish that they would do, here's my Valve wish. They have a tool that lets you build and share custom configurations for the Steam controller and any other input device. I wish that they would do the same thing for the Proton configuration and the command line stuff, so that I can load up Steam, and when I have a game that's like not working right or that's iffy, whether it's on the Steam machine or the deck or my Linux machine, I wish I could hit a button and say, oh, here, get the Proton DB experience built into Steam using the same kind of community voted infrastructure that they're using for the controller configurations. Because it shouldn't be complicated. They know what the hardware in my machine is. They should be able to filter down to the people who are running the same stuff that I'm running and give me, hey, this is something that everybody thinks is okay, so that I don't have to go look at Proton DB and copy in a bunch of command line stuff and choose some screwy version of Proton, all the stuff that you have to do right now. So that's my wish. Valve, are you listening?
All right.
Let us know. I guess on that note, that's as good a place as any to wrap it up. We've both shared our deepest Valve desires. Norm, thank you as always for coming by. You've done, I think I've seen 2 videos, I think, for this. Is there more that I've missed? It's YouTube is inscrutable these days.
No, there's a second team channel that I might do more stuff on, but at this point I'm just waiting for Frame.
Okay, cool.
I can say I don't have Frame.
Okay.
Not right now.
Okay, good to know.
I'm not under NDA. I'm not under embargo because I don't have it.
I am wild. Like, look, tea leaves a little bit. What do you think? Are we looking at, hey, you can port your Quest games over to this thing and you'll be able to VR. We're going to make VR a thing again, or is this a, hey, that's
the hope, right? Like you could put an Android APK right on this thing. That was the promise when they announced it in November. But there's so much more to test with Frame. There's local games, there are Android, there's games that are x86, then there's streaming, there's the Wi-Fi streaming stick, right? And there's so many questions. And of course, price too.
I mean, the other thing that's happened since they announced that is, and it's partly due to the downstream work that they're doing with the FEX, is the x86 emulation on ARM is, Adam Patrick Murray over on Expedition Handheld has been talking about this a lot lately, but it's feeling real good now, not even for old games, just for current x86 games. So it might be the stealth, like, hey, this is the baller product out of all these. I can't wait to see it. I'm very curious. So anyway, Norm, tested.com, youtube.com/tested.
That's it.
Anything personal you want to plug? I don't think you're here on.
No, Blue Sky and channel on Blue Sky.
Alrighty. Thanks again, Norm, for coming by. It's always a pleasure to get to catch up and talk about the latest hardware. Make sure you go check out Norm's work over on Tested. He does a wonderful job covering what's going on in VR and consumer technology over there, among all the other stuff on the channel. Again, it's tested.com and the Tested YouTube channel. As always, this is the part of the show where I remind folks that we are a listener-supported show. We wouldn't be here without you all, the listener. So if you would like to find out how to support the show and keep the TechPod ad free, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, it's patreon.com/techpod, where for $5 a month, you get access to the Discord, which is full of beautiful nerds just like you, talking about all sorts of interesting stuff, including things like the Steam Machine and how they're booting it off of the controller input and stuff like that. You can also get the monthly patron exclusive episode where we sometimes take questions, sometimes talk about projects. Last month, I did a little bit of both. I talked about Glance, which is the thing I'm using to build a custom new tab page in my browser. And then we took questions from the Discord. I took questions from the Discord and kind of just went down the list of things that are interesting and exciting going on in everyone's lives, technology wise. So please check that out. And we really appreciate everyone who supports the show. Like I said, we like having the TechPod be ad free, and your support makes that happen. So we appreciate each and every person who does support the show. But we want to give an extra special thank you and shout out to our executive producer tier patrons, including Infelicitous Rips, Jordan Lippett, Octothorpe Bunny Fiend, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. Thanks everybody for listening. We will be back next week with another edition of the Tech Pod. Until then, please consider the environment before printing this podcast.